The station was loud, metal clashing, announcements echoing like ghosts through steel arches. But inside, I only heard my heartbeat. Slow, then fast. Then nothing. I stood just past the platform barrier, the paper bag in my hand crumpling with each pulse of my fingers. It was warm. Still warm. I had timed everything. Left early. Took the longer train. I even added a little note under the sandwich wrap. Don't forget to eat. I love you. N. My scarf flapped loose in the wind, the red one. The one he'd bought on our first anniversary trip to Kyoto. The one that still smelled faintly of cedar and something sweet. I reached up to keep it down and realized my hand was shaking. The arrivals board flickered, indifferent to my panic. 1:42 p.m. I should be halfway down the block by now, pushing open the glass doors of his building. Smiling. Light teasing. He'd look up surprised. Maybe he'd kiss me in front of his coworkers, or maybe he'd be embarrassed. Either way, he'd eat. Instead, I stood still, watching. There was a girl near the corner bench. Her boots were scuffed at the toes, cheap leather, peeling. She had that air about her. The kind of posture that says she knows something you don't. Her head was bowed, but I could see her mouth trembling. Not crying. Just vibrating with something she hadn't said yet. She looked up, and her eyes locked on mine for just a second too long. Then she walked away. Left behind a cracked watch on the bench. Its hands had stopped moving, frozen at 12:13. I stared at that watch like it was trying to tell me something. Like it knew. Knew what? A breeze kicked up and whipped my scarf hard across my chest, as if to pull me backward. Away from something. My grip on the lunch bag tightened. I started walking. Through the train gates. Past the bakery I used to love when I worked near here. Past the florist who always gave me the wilting daisies because they need love too. Past the man playing violin with a bucket full of coins and no shoes. I didn't stop. I couldn't. Something was building inside me. It had no name, just pressure. A scream with no mouth. I reached his building. Pressed the elevator button. Once. Twice. The mirrored walls caught my reflection. Lips dry. Eyes dull. My scarf red, like a wound. The door opened with a ding. 10th floor. His door was half closed, just like always. He hated it shut. Said it made him feel caged. I saw the movement before I saw them. A rhythm. Then the sound, a low laugh. Familiar. My sister's. She used to laugh like that when she stole my diary. When she dated the boy I liked in college. When she said, I would never. The lunch bag slipped from my hand before I stepped inside. And there she was. Straddling him. Her hands in his hair. His lips not resisting. Her necklace, a tiny silver heart I gave her on our last real Christmas together, bounced with each breathless move. Her eyes widened when she saw me, but his didn't. He didn't see me. He was too busy forgetting who I was. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I picked up the red scarf from the floor where it had fallen. And I walked back into the hallway. That's when I remembered the cracked watch. 12:13, the exact time I'd left the house. As if something had stopped moving then. As if time had been trying to warn me. I didn't go home. And what I did next, well, let's just say, not everything that breaks stays broken. Some things, when shattered, cut back. Hard. The lunch bag had fallen open in the stairwell, its inside spilling gently, one sandwich, cut diagonally like he preferred, a tiny thermos of miso soup, and the folded note now unfolded. The ink had smudged from where I gripped it too tight. I bent to gather it all like it still mattered. The red scarf slipped from my shoulder again. I didn't fix it. Outside, the sun was too bright. One of those afternoons where the heat sticks to your skin and every shadow feels like it's watching you. I walked 3 blocks without direction, past office windows reflecting people living lives they hadn't ruined yet. A kid was blowing bubbles on the corner, fat, glistening ones that caught the sun like tiny planets. His mother held a bag of groceries in one hand, his tiny palm in the other. She laughed when he chased the bubbles, not noticing they always popped just before he caught them. I used to laugh like that. Years ago, when I was 9, I brought my father lunch during his shift at the garage. I had made peanut butter sandwiches, wrapped in wax paper and pressed into an old blue lunchbox I found in the attic. I remember him kneeling beside the oil-dripping Buick and wiping his hands on a rag before opening it. He didn't say thank you, just pulled me close and said, "Always feed the people you love. One day, they might be too tired to feed themselves." I held on to that. Maybe too tightly. That's why I packed lunch this morning. Why I warmed the soup twice even though I was already late. Why I chose the red scarf, because he once said it made me look like I believed in things. And I did. I did. Until today. I sat on a bench near the Riverwalk, legs curled to the side like a child. The lunch bag rested beside me, heavier now that it meant nothing. Around me, the world kept moving slow but unbothered. A woman in a blazer rushed past me, still typing on her phone. Two teenagers shared a headphone, swaying slightly to music only they could hear. A man in an old wool coat sat 3 benches down, tossing breadcrumbs to pigeons and not watching where they landed. I watched them all. No one saw me. Except him. The stranger had been sitting there when I arrived. Early 30s, maybe. Hair messy but deliberate. His hands were in his lap, one thumb rubbing the edge of a weathered book he hadn't opened. I felt his gaze, not pressing, but patient. He wasn't curious. He was waiting. For something. Maybe for me to cry. Or scream. Or break. I didn't. Instead, I pressed my scarf tighter around my neck and turned away. A child ran past, nearly colliding with my knee, and I flinched. The soup thermos wobbled, then rolled gently onto the gravel. I reached for it, but a different hand got there first. His. He held it out without a word. His eyes, up close, were the color of thunder right before it breaks. I took the thermos and nodded, trying to give him a smile. It came out crooked. "Thanks," I whispered. He didn't answer. Just looked at the scarf for a moment, then back at me. His eyes asked something he didn't say. And I didn't answer. He stood slowly, tucked the book under his arm, and walked away without turning back. No name. No question. But halfway down the path he paused. Looked over his shoulder. Like he'd forgotten something. And I almost called out. Almost. But my voice stuck, like the notes still folded in my coat pocket. I sat there long after he disappeared. Watching the bubbles float above the street. Watching them pop, again and again, just before the catch. Until one didn't. It lingered, caught in a slant of wind, hovering. And for a second I didn't move. Rain didn't come suddenly, it hovered. Heavy clouds shifting like bruises across the sky, waiting. Waiting like him. I saw him again the next day. Same bench. Same posture. Same unread book in his lap. The river behind him moved slow, grayish, restless, like everything in me. I didn't mean to stop. I had walked past the office building, past the glass door still bearing his fingerprints and hers. Past the spot where I dropped the lunch bag. I hadn't picked it up this time. I didn't bring lunch today. I brought nothing. Not even answers. He didn't look up when I approached. I sat 3 spaces down. Space enough for doubt, not distance. The scarf, my red scarf, was tied tighter today, knotted high at the throat, like it might hold me together. A gust lifted my hair into my eyes. I brushed it away and glanced sideways. His shoes were scuffed near the toe. Old soles, the kind that bend too easily. The stitching on one side had frayed. Not dirty. Just tired. I tried not to look too long, but I noticed something else. His wallet had slipped a little from his coat pocket. A photo peeked out. Curled at the edges. A boy. Maybe 7, maybe 8. Grinning with a gap between his teeth. A red balloon in his hand. There was something familiar in the boy's eyes, something wide and wanting. A look I recognized from mirrors. The man tucked the photo back in without touching it directly, like it might burn. "You're here again," I said, quieter than I meant. He didn't look at me, but I heard him exhale. "You too." A beat passed. Then another. "Waiting for someone?" I asked, unsure why the words came out. His mouth twitched. Not a smile. No. Not anymore. The river made a low sound, like it was murmuring secrets to itself. I looked down at my hands. Pale. Still trembling if I let them. I saw something I wasn't supposed to, I said finally. Yesterday. I know. My head turned sharply. He met my gaze now steady. You looked like someone who lost something mid-step, he added. People like that, they don't see where they're going. They feel it instead. I didn't ask how he knew. I already did. The wind picked up and the first drop hit my forehead, sharp and cold. Then another. The kind of rain that doesn't ask permission. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. Let it soak in. No rush to shelter. Sometimes, he said, voice almost drowned by the rain, people don't fall apart. They just stop showing up. Quietly. Even to themselves. That landed hard. I looked away, blinking fast. The sky opened up then, full rain now, threading through my hair, soaking the red scarf, making it stick to my throat. I should have left. I had things to do. Places to be. Or maybe not. He reached into his coat, pulled out the unread book, and finally opened it. Pages swollen with age. Margins marked in tight, angry pencil. What's it about? I asked, surprising myself. He looked at the page, not reading. Consequences. I pulled my knees to my chest. A car splashed past behind us, water in arcs. The thunder growled faintly somewhere in the distance, just enough to make the silence between us feel heavier. He closed the book. You ever wish you could just do the wrong thing? I whispered. Not for revenge. Just to feel something different. He didn't answer. But he didn't look away either. The rain dripped from the edge of his hair, down his jaw. He watched me the way someone watches a storm through a glass window, close enough to feel it in the bones, but not foolish enough to step in. I stood slowly. My fingers brushed the edge of the bench. He looked up. And I almost asked his name. Almost told him mine. Instead, I just said, maybe I'll bring lunch tomorrow. He didn't smile. But he didn't say no. The rain had stopped by morning, but everything still smelled like memory, wet concrete, bruised leaves, forgotten iron. I walked slower this time. The scarf was damp from where it had dried overnight on the radiator. It still held a faint crease where I'd clutched it too tightly. Like a wound that healed wrong. The bench was empty when I arrived. For the first time, I felt stupid for hoping. I sat anyway. My coat was too thin for the chill. Wind skimmed the river's surface, catching cigarette butts and bits of torn newspaper. One page clung to the metal fence like it was trying to tell me something in bold, soaked print. I didn't read it. People passed. A man in a clean suit eyed me, glanced at my clothes, creased from sleep, scarf askew, and looked away with practiced discomfort. A woman whispered something to her friend as they passed, just loud enough for my skin to feel it. Poor thing. Probably waiting for someone who's never coming. They were right. But not in the way they thought. I should have gone home. Should have packed. Should have changed the locks. Called a lawyer. Something. Instead, I waited for a man whose name I still didn't know. It was almost noon when I saw him again, coming from the bridge this time, slower than usual. His coat hung heavier. And in his hand my scarf. Not the one I was wearing. The other one. The original one. The one I'd left behind the first day, soaked in soup and shame. It had been cleaned. He stopped a few feet from me, held it up like something fragile. You dropped this, he said. My breath caught, but I nodded. I didn't mean to. I know. He sat down beside me this time, not leaving space. Not today. Some people carry more than just bags. They carry silence. Grief folded neatly into their pockets. Regret woven into their collars. He carried all of it, and so did I. I used to think red meant love, I whispered. Now it just feels loud. It still means something, he replied, turning the scarf in his hands. Even if it's not what it used to. A beat passed. Then he said, quieter, some things don't stop meaning, they just change shape. His thumb brushed the hem. There was a small tear I hadn't seen before. We sat in that, the quiet. Our shoulders nearly touching. A child nearby dropped a juice box, and his mother swore under her breath. Her eyes met mine for a second, tired, guarded. I recognized that look too. The silent judgment of people who see a woman alone and assume brokenness. Maybe they're right. Maybe broken people have their own orbit. He turned toward me, the scarf resting between us now. I've made mistakes too, he said. Different ones. But I know the weight. I wanted to ask about the boy in the photo, about the bruises beneath his silence, but my voice caught behind the lump rising in my throat. I almost left this morning, I said. Packed my bag, walked to the door. But something made me stop. I looked back, just once. And I didn't like what I saw. A long pause. He didn't offer comfort. He just breathed slow. The scarf lay across my knees on the subway ride home, coiled like a question I hadn't answered yet. People avoided the seat next to me. My eyes were red, but I didn't cry. I stared through the streaked glass, the city flickering past fast, then slow, then still. When I got home, I found the apartment quieter than it should be. Too clean. His shoes were gone from the rack. The coffee cup he'd used every morning was rinsed, left upside down on the drying mat like an apology. There was a note on the counter, folded once. I think we need space. That was all. Not even his name. I didn't scream. Just pressed the scarf to my face and let silence fold over me like a second skin. 2 days later, I stood outside a high-rise downtown, hands tucked into my sleeves. My bank account had dipped low enough to echo. I had no job, no plan, just a name scrawled on a sticky note. E.M. Reeves, Executive Hiring, RNV Holdings. The company my ex had laughed about, saying they only hired men who smelled like wood and ambition. I had applied on a whim. I didn't expect to get the interview. I didn't expect him to open the door. He didn't flinch. Just stepped back slowly and said, "You're early." I looked past him at the hallway, polished floors, abstract art, an orchid dying in the corner. "You work here?" I asked. He studied me. "No," I blinked. "I own it." His voice was quiet. Matter of fact. Like it didn't matter. But it did. Because in his office, walls lined with first editions, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a city I no longer belonged to, sat the same framed photo I had seen tucked into his wallet. The boy. But this time, the frame was larger. There was a woman beside him. And the red balloon. And then I noticed the scarf again, my scarf, folded carefully on a side table like something sacred. I turned toward him, suddenly breathless. "That photo," he nodded. Slowly. "My daughter." The scarf was hers. Bought it the day she turned 10. She said red made her feel like a superhero. The room tilted slightly. "She died last winter," he added, barely audible. Card didn't see her crossing. I looked down at the scarf now in my hands. My knees went weak. "You said I dropped it," I whispered. "But I didn't." "No," he said. "You didn't." My heartbeat cracked in my ears. "Why? Why did you give it to me?" His eyes softened, not with pity, but recognition. "Because you looked like someone who needed to believe they could still save something." Time looped. Sometimes people don't fall apart. They just stop showing up. Quietly. Even to themselves. That's when I knew. I hadn't come here for the job. I had come to remember. To remember what it felt like to fight for breath when someone you love forgets your face. To hold something warm in your hands when the rest of you goes cold. He stepped back, giving me space. The job offer was still on the table. Literal and figurative. A folder with my name typed cleanly across the top. Benefits. Stability. Escape. And yet, my hand reached not for the papers, but the photo. Her eyes. That same wide look. The one I wore the day I brought lunch, not knowing it would be my last act as his wife. Some people carry more than just bags. They carry silence. Scars. And sometimes each other. "I can't walk backward anymore," I said, voice barely steady. "You don't have to," he replied. "But you have to walk somewhere." I took one last breath. And stepped into the room. The office lights dimmed as dusk bled across the skyline, casting long shadows over polished glass and paper promises. I stood just inside the room, The city laid out before me like a place I'd never been. Behind me, the door closed with a soft click. A quiet that didn't feel empty, just final. He sat across the desk, sleeves rolled up, eyes unreadable. The red scarf lay between us now, folded again. Not a thread out of place. He pushed it forward. "I'm returning this," he said, gently. "It doesn't belong here anymore." I reached out, then stopped. "It never did," I said. He leaned back, studying me the way someone studies a storm, with caution and memory. A silence stretched, long and raw. "I wasn't trying to fix you," he said after a while. "Or replace her. You reminded me, not of her face, but her fire. That part of her that kept standing, even when the world told her to kneel." "And now?" I asked. He exhaled. "Now I know I was never saving you. You just walked in when I forgot how to see." A pulse behind my ribs ached to believe him. But I didn't. Not fully. Because he wasn't wrong, but that didn't make him right either. "You offered me the job," I said slowly. "But that wasn't about the work." "No," he admitted. "It was about what you carry. The kind of quiet that turns into armor." I looked down at the scarf, red like the first fire, red like goodbye. And then I knew. I couldn't take it with me. Couldn't keep wearing grief as if it gave me shape. I folded it once more. Tighter this time. "You need to bury it," I said, placing it in his hands. Not hold it. His fingers closed around the cloth like something sacred. But he nodded. "Where should I put it?" "Where she smiled last." We both knew what that meant. I turned toward the window, toward the city that had once made me feel invisible. It didn't anymore. "I'm not taking the job," I said, soft but certain. He stood then. For the first time, I saw it, the tired bend in his posture, the ache in his gaze. Not a man searching. A man letting go. "Where will you go?" he asked. "I don't know," I replied. "But I'll be going, not returning." He gave a faint, broken smile. "That's enough." The train station hadn't changed. Still crowded. Still full of faces not looking. But I had. And now, they looked different. I stood near the platform where it all began, paper bag in hand, but this time, it held nothing. Just a quiet goodbye. The same red scarf now wrapped the base of a steel beam, tied tight, fluttering in the breeze like a warning or a prayer. A woman passed with a daughter skipping beside her, tiny hand gripping too tight. The mother looked tired, but not defeated. I stepped aside so they could pass. "Mommy," the little girl said, pointing at the scarf. "It looks like fire." The mother smiled faintly. Or like someone remembering. The train roared in, wind rushing past, hair in my face, eyes dry for the first time in weeks. I didn't flinch. I stepped forward. And this time, no one stopped me. No one needed to. Some people carry silence. Some carry guilt. I carried memory. But I didn't wear it anymore. That was my sacrifice. My rebirth. As the train doors slid open, I glanced once more at the scarf behind me, dancing in the wind. Not waving goodbye. Not asking me to stay.